Hello, everyone, and welcome to my preview of Ring of Honor Final Battle. Welcome back to my channel, where today I am joined by Pro Wrestling Torch's Tyler Siege. How are you, Tyler?
I am very good. I want to first say that your video intro is far superior to the one we have over at the Torch. So congratulations on that. I've wanted to
Thank
say that
you.
for a while, but I thought I figured I'd save it live. But yeah, you got some good professional
I
imaging
made
is what we
all
call in the
myself.
business. So
I made it all myself. Does that
there you go.
shock you? It shocks me.
No, I mean I would. That's what I would guess, but I didn't want to put you on the spot and say, did you make it? And then you had to say like, no, I outsourced it. So I didn't want to blast you, but you put yourself on the pedestal and you did it. So good job.
Well, long time viewers of my channel will know that I've changed all the graphics and the like imagery and everything to kind of relaunch it. So it's a neon theme to match my sign, and and speaking of my sign, I am Miss Dynamite, and you are at Ring of Tyler. So kind of like what's happening in the wrestling world right now. Ring of Honor is invading Dynamite today as we do this show together. I thought you were the most fitting person to ask, as someone that loves Ring of Honor so much they have it in their handle.
Yes, very much so. And then sort of some background on that. I used to cover when I got aligned with the Torch. I
Mhm.
started by doing weekly recaps of Ring of Honor in like 2019. So if you didn't watch, I did like a little crappy like Word document that you could read on the site, and then I eventually started covering the TV and did a podcast and all that stuff. So I went all in with my branding as a wrestling guy and thought, okay, Ring of Honor's been around for 20 years. It's always going to be relevant. And then it kind of goes under while I'm doing a podcast, and now it's bought by the company that I then transitioned and covered AEW a lot for the Torch. So I think it's very apropos that it all kind of realigned here. And for better for worse, I think we'll talk about today on
Yeah.
is it good that ROH and AEW are so intertwined? Probably not, but we'll talk about that today.
I'm really glad that you stuck with it, though. I'm glad that you kept Ring of Tyler. You didn't become like Tyler on
Oh,
Impact or Tyler Raw or
yeah.
something like that. Like, I'm glad you stuck with it, man. I think it's going
Yeah.
to pay off for you in the end.
Well, thanks. I think a couple of those would be a different career path altogether with those handles. But so yes, thank you. I appreciate it. You got to stay. Once you pick a brand and you pick a lane, I think it's good to be there. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, that's what I've done with Dynamite. I really, really picked that lane, and now that is what I'm in. But
There you go.
but before we get into previewing the card, we're going to go match by match. But we're also going to talk a wider discussion about Ring of Honor in AEW, because Tyler is from the Torch, and him and Zach Haydorn do great shows like every day, pretty much, on that Torch YouTube channel, where they go in depth on everything that's going on in wrestling. And I particularly enjoyed their AEW based chats and hear a lot of their like really well thought out takes on what's currently going on, which has been like such a weird year in AEW with everything that's happened, and just the fact that Ring of Honor is a part of it. But before we get into that, guys, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and go give me a follow on Twitter at Stephanie M. Cheese. And of course, follow Tyler at Ring of Tyler, and subscribe to the Torches YouTube channel, because it's really good and you get so much content. You guys, like, how do you fit that in every day going live?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Zach is for sure the MVP. He would say the same for me, but he'd be lying because he does a lot more of the hard live streams to me. Like he'll cover NXT. I really don't watch
You'll watch
NXT.
a full pay-per-view in front of the world.
Well, yeah, I mean that's fine. Me and him both do that. That's fine, right? I mean, it's I mean, if we get to tens of thousands of people watching, then it's a little scarier that I might say
Yeah,
something that might get me in trouble in the real world. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, he does the heavy lifting on the stuff I don't watch, but it's fun to preview stuff that it's funny. I don't know if you've ever, and the people out there watching, like when you, let's say, don't watch WWE for 3 weeks and then you pop back in and it's like, oh, it's like I never left. It's kind of fun to preview shows that you don't watch all the time and all that stuff. But yes, it's a labor of love as I ramble here. And yeah, you can go over to the Torch YouTube page, check it out, and see for yourself. I do not need to sell it anymore. You can go check it out. But yeah, thanks for having me.
And I was on your channel last week talking about Dynamite. So
Yes.
yeah, definitely check that out. But you told us a little bit about how you ended up being Ring of Tyler.
Mhm.
So I think a good place to start. So you're there, you're writing your Ring of Honor reports, you've got your handle, and then you hear that they're going on hiatus, and you probably didn't know what to do with your life at that point. And then in it was either February or late January, but I was there in Daly's place when Tony Khan said he has an announcement, and he comes out and says that he has bought Ring of Honor. And wow, I that was the time I thought he was going to say they were finally doing some sort of streaming, but
Mhm.
no, he had actually bought Ring of Honor. Like the Ring of Honor fanboy had bought it. Um, my reaction to it, like, because as everyone knows, like I'm a huge CM Punk fan. In Ring of Honor, and I also someone that really does not want Vince McMahon to hold all of wrestling history, especially recent history. So I was very happy by that too. But I wasn't like thinking far ahead to like where we'd be now. But what was your reaction that Tony Khan was the one who like wrote the check for Ring of Honor?
Yeah, you write the check is a good way to end that question because I know what was being floated to people that weren't Tony Khan for the purchase
Mhm.
price of that. Just because, as we talked off air a little bit, I was a little tight in, not like SRS news breaking type person on all that stuff, but I know the number was around 20 million, right? That was being offered for the rights to the company and everything. And it was scoffed at by many people that I was
Mhm.
aligned with. So I was like, oh yeah, they found the guy to write the biggest check and he did it. So, that was my first thought of like,
That's Tony.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you got the money, it doesn't really matter, right? Like if he wants
Yeah.
something, it's worth what someone will pay for it, right? Is capitalism in a nutshell, I guess. But I was joking aside, I was happy that it was going to not go to Vince at the time, which is crazy to even think about. Like it's so close to Vince not being part of WWE. That's
Mhm.
almost like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if Hunter was running this thing? Ring of Honor had this history and it was on the network, all that stuff. Like that
Yeah.
idea is so close to what, but no. So it's very, I'm glad that's there. We could be preserved as someone who went to a lot of the shows and was a fan of it. And that's good. And I was like, oh, cool. This whole library will be available when, like you thought, I thought the same thing. It was going to be a streaming service, was going to be announced, like it was going to be on HBO Max or what have you to watch the shows, get pay-per-views a little cheaper, etc. And that the Ring of Honor back catalog would be on there, all in the original show in
Yeah.
2019. It started all would be available, not
Mhm.
just like pirated on YouTube as I watch occasionally. So um, that was all good sign. And then it was, I don't know, let me know if you know the exact dates, but I think it was maybe the day after or the next media scrum that he had where he said he'd be booking ROH himself and they were going to try and make it its own
Yeah.
individual product. And I was like, oh no. And that's like when I was still, not as an analyst or commentator, whatever you want to call what I do. I was not as I had a little bit more of a rosy outlook on Tony Khan's management of AEW and wrestling in general. Now I'm a little more critical, as you
Yeah.
were part of the show, the Fireside Chat last week, where we talked on the PW Torch YouTube channel, where I was pretty critical of that last episode, not last night's, but the week prior. But
Yeah.
anyway, I was worried to hear all of that, and I think a lot of that has borne fruit. I did not think it would take this long to get it off of regular AEW TV, but so two minds, right? Happy
Mhm.
it's preserved, happy that brand is out there, happy people like we'll talk about here in a little bit, like Shane Taylor, are getting positions. Dalton Castle, while they're not for everybody, I think it's good that those people are employed and in front of more eyeballs than they were in the past. Because, I mean, I love Ring of Honor, but that last year under Sinclair, once they came back from the pandemic, was it was not the greatest era in the company's history, right? I went to
Mhm.
the first pay per view that came back after the pandemic, and it was probably 400 people there, which is
Yeah.
like kind of depressing to think about. So seeing that first AEW branded pay per view that had the hottest crowd I've seen in Ring of Honor since the Bucks
Yeah.
left was heartening. So yeah, two minds about it. I'm excited to see if it goes solo, and as I think we're gonna get some answers on Saturday. So, we can hypothesize about that as well if you want. But yeah, I think overall, in the grand scheme of history, it'll probably be a good thing. This year, it was one of the big one or two negatives of the company.
Yeah, it's funny that you say, like, when we all got the realization that he was actually going to run a Ring of Honor promotion and book it, because at that time, Punk was doing amazing feud with MJF, and like Tony buying Ring of Honor just worked for that so well. Then we got like actual video of Punk and Ring of Honor could be used. Got Punk doing his Ring of Honor entrance. Like, it all just seemed to like fit. But like the reality of Tony then making it a promotion or keeping it as a promotion in a year where, like, just months after he buys Ring of Honor, we get Forbidden Door, that I would honestly say I think was a really badly built show that turned out to be a great show, but the build to it was just like so just random that they couldn't like put together anything that really made sense or like properly present the people. You got like I don't think I'll ever forgive Jay White's debut being in a Rampage pre-tape like back.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they decided to do with that man. Or like you have Ospreay like just coming out, like these people that we've been waiting for. But he's doing all that, like the Forbidden Door stuff, while he's also like, yeah, and I can also, book a Ring of Honor promotion without it having any TV. Yeah, so you said there that you didn't think it would take as long as it did to get Ring of Honor like off the AEW TV. So when he said I'm gonna book it, was your expectation that he has like a deal lined up like right now in March, say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about a deal lined up. I thought, again, like we both thought, I thought there'd be a streaming service imminent, and maybe this was like the cherry on top to be like, here's like an exclusive that will be on the streaming service while you, host Dynamite, whatever, 21 days after it's off cable. That's what I thought. And then when it, didn't happen, maybe a month or two later, and, Ring of Honor was prevalent, but it wasn't like, they built to that first pay-per-view. It made sense. Like, hey, we're kind of weird transition period. It's like when you're growing your hair out, right? You got the weird medium thing where you're like, oh, I'm going to chop all this off because I hate it. I look stupid. But that's what we were in there. And then it like, once we got past Forbidden Door, it's like, oh my God, is this like, I thought maybe it'd be on YouTube, and it's just like, just powering through for the whole year. And now it's like, really, it feels like Saturday. I think that's at the Scrum. He's going to say you talk about it. Like that feels like, it's got to happen one way or the other here, or else it's like, I don't know, DEFCON 1 on this being a albatross around the neck of AEW, essentially.
Yeah, I think he is in that stage where he's kind of defensive about it, because he did do that interview where he said, it's really only Chris Jericho from Ring of Honor, or on the shows, and I did hear that you did not agree with that statement. And I mean, neither did I. Like that's really not true. It might have been true, maybe that 1 week or something, but there's been like a lot of Ring of Honor, and I'll be so interested, we all will be, on what this deal actually is, because I think, or whatever he's got, because he's really held off on not putting this on YouTube. Like, he obviously believes the brand is worth more than putting it on YouTube, where he hosts Dark and Dark Elevation. And maybe that's because he paid so much for it. But I can't see him, getting anything close to like what he has with AEW. Maybe them going somewhere that is streaming would be good for them. But I do kind of have a slight theory about Tony, that sometimes if he doesn't, I feel like, side note, but Battle of the Belts was truly meant to be something big, and then like from the first show, it was just like, no. And like, he almost, the way he books Battle of the Belts is like he books it like he's saying F you to Battle of the Belts, because he'll book the Dynamite the week before to have like all title matches, and then Battle of the Belts will have like these minor title matches. And I always think I think he thought he was getting something else from the network for that special, maybe like 2 hours or something. And then when they said no, he's just like, well, I give up then. Like,
Mhm.
kind of like cuts off his nose to spite his face type thing. And I feel like sometimes I wonder if he's kind of in that mindset about Rampage too, because it's been this constant thing of like, I'm gonna make Rampage better, or you're gonna see a big change in Rampage, and it hasn't happened. And then he was back out there this week saying, all hands on deck for a big Rampage, and still like after they did that record low. So it would be interesting to see what deal he or whatever he has up his sleeve for it, because I feel like if it doesn't match his expectation, it's probably not great for the direction of Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of angles to go here. I don't know if you, I mean, you kind of gave your, I don't know if you gave your prediction on what you
Mm.
think the thing will be. So if you wanted, do you want to
Okay.
do that now or before I lay into mine?
So I don't know. I think it would be on a like Warner streaming type platform, but I don't know all the different, because being from the UK, I don't know all the different platforms. But if there's like tiers of them, not the highest.
Yeah, so because I know, because you don't get HBO Max, right? I think it's only in the US, right?
Yeah.
So like, how do you watch like House of the Dragon if you were to watch it? I guess
Oh,
if this is
well, that would be on like, I think maybe our version of that would be like Sky, like
okay,
the Murdoch
because
owned Sky that has like Sky Atlantic,
yeah,
Sky that shows those shows.
okay, cool. So, because that's like my theory as a U.S. consumer
Mm.
was that so Discovery and Time Warner are the same company, and
Yeah.
there's a service called Discovery Plus that has all the Discovery Channel shows and all that, and then HBO Max. They're merging in early spring and just calling it Max, and I think that's supposed to be global. Like I don't know if
Right.
you have Discovery Plus. Doesn't matter. I don't know anyone that actually has Discovery Plus, so you might have it in your area and no one has it. So.
Uh-huh.
But my thought there was aligned with you there that it'd be on that's the most likely streaming platform
Yeah.
because you want to. But then there's all the questions of when your TV deal's up, if you don't have like a handshake agreement, do you really want to be tied to the company you're with currently and then you can't move your television product? The other theory I had there was he bought what's left of Honor Club, which
Right.
I don't know if you ever used it, about the worst streaming platform of all time. And I assume maybe that's what's taken 6 months is trying to get that service even usable for the consumer. And maybe there's some form of that where you can sign up to Honor Club, get the back catalog, you can get
Uh-huh.
pay-per-views. If you pay $10 a month, you get the pay-per-views for free. So then you're paying, $30 for a pay-per-view essentially instead of 40 because, it's one every 3 months. So that's kind of where I'm leaning. But I don't know, like,
He'd put like a weekly show on Honor Club.
yeah, I don't. That's where it gets tough because, um, man, who's viewing that? Like, if
Yeah.
you get
That's
and
like,
then,
that's
so
like
yeah,
that's niche than a niche there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe this is where Jeff Jarrett comes into play, and he made this ultimate business decision, and we'll see. But I'm very interested. I think that's kind of like the kind of like most of a besides like putting on YouTube, which you and I put lots of great content on YouTube, so nothing wrong with YouTube, but that YouTube's kind of the lowest form here, and I think Honor Club would be just above that, and then a streaming service would be in the middle, and then like if you get a cable deal, that's great. So that's kind of where I see it, and who knows? I've been wrong about a lot of AEW business predictions in the past, so I don't think this will be any different.
Yeah, it will be so interesting to see what he's got, and then how he tries to sell like what he's got.
Mhm.
But as far as the camp, it seems like you are in the too much Ring of Honor on AEW camp.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's in that broad sense. I'm not. I don't hate it. Like if Rampage was an ROH focused show within the
Yeah.
company, that would be fine with me. It's going to have similar viewership. It's just the the belts are the huge thing. If anyone listens to me, the number of
Belt.
belts is just a huge issue with every company, right? That's I think why I've transitioned so hard to liking WWE's decisions lately because they keep taking belts away, not adding belts.
Yeah.
But that just muddles things, makes people not important. Title belts are to make people that are on an even playing field from a athletic standpoint and other things to like this person's important right now. You should view them. And when everyone walks around with that, obviously that's pretty much 101 wrestling. But that's confusing. Also, essentially, if you just watch if you, let's say we binge watched AEW content since that Tony Khan announcement that he's buying Ring of Honor, there's really no through line on what is the difference between what. It's people watching shows like this that helps them get the nuance if they weren't diehard wrestling nerds like Tony Khan for the last 20 years to kind of get the scope of everything. So that's been a problem. But the Ring of Honor, if Rampage was called, Ring of Honor Rampage in 1 week from now, and that's where Jericho lived, and that's where Samoa Joe lived, and that's where FTR lived, I think that'd be awesome. And I don't know, like you might get a pop in viewership initially, and you could do it live in a different location. I think all that could be positive, but that decision was not made. That might not be his. That might be more of a network thing to not change the branding like that. Maybe the new deal it would, but so it's a long answer of like, theoretically I don't hate it, but the way it's been laid out, I think has been nothing but negative from a confusion for the fan standpoint and what's important, what's not important, why is Jericho's less important than MJF's title, etc. So.
Yeah, we're both people sitting here with belts in our background, but there are too many belts on eight. Like I feel like they're, the All Atlantic title is like the belt jump the shark moment. Mm-hmm. Like why did you need that? Like, ever? Nobody was asking for this. Like at least with the trios title, there were some people, I guess, asking for that, but no one was like, I think we need a title for random people that aren't American, like just a collection of countries, since it's not even all Atlantic, but then there's American has it now, so we didn't even it's just like so random. But I think maybe the best example of it, and I love him, but when Dalton Castle came out to challenge Jericho, and he was worried about, he was worried his trios title. And if you were just someone that with no Ring of Honor context, watching AEW, parachuting in, this man comes out to challenge, and he already has a belt around his waist. That just adds to the feeling of, does everyone have a belt here? Does everyone? And what you were saying about how they haven't distinguished between what title is better than the other. I feel like, not to get into Dynamite, but it was an amazing match, but I never would have booked the Acclaimed versus FTR right before a Ring of Honor pay-per-view, because I think, we really do know what title is more important, which tag team title. We all did anyway, but it was really set out. I think you can have the tag team champions of your other brand lose before their pay-per-view to the, AEW tag team champions. It just made them look a bit. Yeah. So what's different between the titles, I guess, is the AEW ones are better or bigger. That was such a weird decision, but I mean, we'll get into FTR.
Yeah, I will table that. I think that might be more of a interpersonal dispute amongst human beings than belt superiority, but that's just me. So we can get into that when we talk about that match. So
we'll get into that. Well, let's get into the card.
Okay.
And the first match I'm going to go into, I just mentioned him, and I do love him. So if he's listening, nothing I say here takes away from how much I love you, Dalton Castle, and the boys, versus the Embassy, Brian Cage, and Gates of Agony with Prince Nana for the 6-man tag team championship. Let me just get this graphic up here. Why I wanted to start with this match was because we just had a discussion about if there's too much Ring of Honor and AEW and how they introduce them. And I feel like the Gates of Agony are always used as the example, of the who the hell is this? Because the Gates of Agony seem to just appear with no explanation. We were all meant to know. Prince Nana is great, but he's kind of just there, we're meant to know. And then, Brian Cage was gone for, he's an AEW guy, but he was gone for ages, and now he's suddenly back in favor or something, but we're working on the Ring of Honor side. And Dalton the boys, we have seen in AEW. He got that big match with Jericho. He was in the Diamond Battle Royal on Wednesday, but he was eliminated so early for someone that was a former Ring of Honor champion and holding a belt. But this match, it's just, there's no hype for this match. Really, is there at all. I don't really have much to say about it. I feel like they might just put the belts on Gates of Agony and Brian Cage, because one, Brian Cage is, an AEW guy, and two, like Gates of Agony seem to always turn up, so they might as well turn up and get the belts on TV, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that they from the AEW perspective, right there, the Gates of Agony and Brian Cage are way more are there more often than Dalton Castle, and he's been shown to be. I mean, Dalton Castle's always been kind of not a joke wrestler, but he's kind of like the Orange Cassidy of Ring of Honor back in the day, where when he takes it seriously, he was world champion. He took it off of Cody. He's the guy that took it off of Cody, and I love him too. And I think that Dalton Castle is perfect for about 100 to 200,000 fans. That's kind of like the peak of like who gets that that type of wrestling. But I would agree with you that Gates of Agony winning here would make the most sense, as they have more visual ID with the fan base, and they've been treated a little bit more serious, and especially with the boys involved, like the way they've been booked so far, you would think that Cage and Leo and Khan would be in there to take that. But yeah, I mean, the point you're making about like that, they're like the meme of like why there's too much Ring of Honor.
They
like,
really are.
Just like as a personal anecdote, I don't know if you've ever interviewed any of the three of them, but
No.
Moses and Khan were a tag team. They were part of Shane Taylor Promotions back in the day, and interviewed them a couple of times. Super nice guys, but like I've like talked to one of the members of Gates of Agony, literally like this Zoom one-on-one, and I forgot that he was part of the company. And you when you talk to a wrestler, you kind of like, I was like, oh hey, I've talked to that guy, that's great. As like in the space, you kind of get an affection for people that are nice with their time and all that stuff. And I was like, that's bad when it's like me and I know the guy and I like him and I want him to succeed, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot he was part of this. And is he in AEW or is he in Ring of Honor? So that just to solidify the meme there. And I think you chose correctly that this is the match with the least amount of hype. And it makes me think, who's not on this card, like a Matt Taven, a Mike Bennett, the guys that were part of a group that were. It's just weird, like how people come in. That's another meme of people coming in and then not showing up on TV for 2 months. So I wonder what's going on there. And so yeah, sorry, I tangented from that, but I agree with you. I have the same pick to win this match.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe, if they do win, we can maybe get some more explanation to kind of just who are like the Gates of Agony.
We'll at least get more belts on Dynamite. I think that's the key. So they can walk around with the belts.
More belts on Dynamite. But please keep using Dalton Castle and Tony Khan if you're watching. Like he's one that I would totally keep. Speaking of matches that haven't really been built, next we have Shane Taylor, as you mentioned earlier, JD Griffey, I hope I said that right, versus Swerve in Our Glory. This is a tag match. To me, this feels like a favor to Keith Lee, wanting to work Shane Taylor. This was set up, I think, on a Rampage there was a backstage promo with Keith Lee. Taylor just walked in, questioned Lee for leaving him 6 years ago, leaving Swerve. He challenged him and a partner of his choice. Swerve came in and said, I'll do it. And then Lee said, can I trust you? And these two, Swerve and Keith Lee, they've had their problems, and it seemed like they were kind of like breaking up, or Keith realized that Swerve was like a bad person, but they're coming together for this match. So I wonder if they kind of backtracked on the storyline just a bit to get this match with Shane Taylor in. I don't know, but I feel like you probably know more about Shane Taylor and the history of him and Keith Lee and Swerve than me. So what is your take on this match?
Yeah, so I brought up Shane's name to begin with. I'm a huge Shane Taylor fan, the person, the wrestler. I think when you see Shane Taylor, like if you're going to get this pay-per-view, you've never seen him wrestle, he's going to walk in there, you're going to be like, really? That's what what kind of lame indie? This is just some dude who works on the dock who's coming in to wrestle, and he'll blow your mind with his athleticism based on his size. He's not Brian Cage athletically, but like he's a guy who looks like he can't do anything. He looks like he can barely like walk around, honestly, and he's like has tremendous matches with Adam Page, Bandito, all these guys back in the day, and can go 1-for-1 with them. So I'm excited to see him here. He would be one of my picks when ROH dissolved to be part of a big show, because he's almost more of a mouthpiece than a than a wrestler, but he's like if Eddie Kingston's running a group, you know how Eddie's like getting fans behind him and his matches are like totally fine, but Eddie's more about watching Eddie win. That's how Shane Taylor is. He can be that version of a guy who kind of comes out of nowhere and is a fan favorite. So I think he's got a lot of potential. But on the history, him and Keith Lee tagged for a long time as Keith Lee, and Swerve tagged before AEW. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of like the Dominic Mysterio, custody battle that we saw back in WWE. But kind of for Keith Lee's allegiance is, I think, the story of this match. And JD was part of Shane Taylor Promotions, as was Khan and Moses, who's not on this card. But basically, that's what I think the story is. This, to me, feels like a little bit of a pocket universe for the Swerve in Our Glory thing, that it's ROH and it doesn't really matter. If you're buying this, then you're a super fan and you kind of can get out of your mind what the Swerve in Our Glory story is, which is a big problem. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to, blow that off and not acknowledge that. But I think that's what this is. And it is to lead to, maybe they'll show a clip of them winning Swerve in Our Glory, that is, who I think is going to win. And it'll be the question mark of, is Keith Lee actually aligned with Swerve now? And then maybe the story will then be told, showing a recap, and they'll have a backstage segment and set up another match where maybe they'll actually separate as a group, is kind of what I'm thinking. But should be a good match, and I'm excited for that. 3 out of the 4 guys. JD, I've seen wrestle just a little bit, so I'm sure he's fine. But I think it could be a sneaky good match if it's given time. And people should just, cue in on Shane Taylor and see if I'm right. If I'm not, then let me know. So
I think it's going to be a good match. And I think that Swerve is one of the most interesting characters in AEW right now. I totally agree with your prediction, though. I think it kind of makes sense that they just win here and they kind of have that moment where they win, and we can kind of pick up the storyline that's going on then maybe like in a week or so in Dynamite when they get some like AEW action. Next up, another one that hasn't had that much of a build either. It is Mercedes Martinez versus Athena. Now, Mercedes has been injured the past couple months. I think she was injured in July. And then Athena, she got some attention for a match that she had with Jody Threat. And they seem to like build this into her character, where now she's like a real badass that beats up officials and stuff. And even on the media call, Tony was talking about Athena, and then he added in like a little bit of kayfabe like he does, where he's like, well, I'm not sure our officials are a fan of her, but that kind of thing. But she did say like recently in an interview that she felt like if she was a man, there wouldn't have been as much backlash to like her match with Jody Threat. And I think that's probably like true as well. I do support that take. I also like Athena because I interviewed her when she was with WWE, and it was after she came back from her injury, and she was just like, yeah, I was really glad I was injured during the pandemic because I would have been too scared to come to work. Agreed. Me too. Yeah. I just like that. But I think that Athena, I do really like her. She's been underutilized, like a lot of people from WWE that weren't like big stars in WWE have. Like they've just come in, and there's definitely like another conversation that we could have about just the AEW women's division in general. And I think of all the Ring of Honor titles, maybe the women's one could have been the one that we could have got the best use out of, like through utilization in AEW, but Mercedes, was injured. So it is what it is. But I think this match, I think it's going to be Athena winning this. And I think that would be good for her. It will give her something to do on AEW, even if it kind of takes her away and puts her in like the ROH universe. At least she'll be doing something like on a consistent basis. And it's probably right to try and build something like, and her character out of, this stuff people have been talking about her, and just giving her like a fresh coat of paint, because I don't think her babyface one was really like setting anyone on fire.
Or at least leaving embers behind for her WWE name. Sure, so I didn't know if you're going for that, so I want to make sure.
No.
But yeah, so a lot here. First of all, off the top, I agree. I think this is Athena's to win. Now, looking at the history of Final Battle, for those that do or don't know, like Ring of Honor did essentially all 1-year contracts for almost everybody. So Final Battle was like how you could tell who was not getting re-signed in the company, because like who would lose and who would, it would be just like, hey, this is the next year, here's our top people. And so I think that tradition of Final Battle is like kind of not out with the old in with the new, but it's like a kind of a refresh of the brand. And I think especially like you laid out with the women's division, I think Athena would be a good start to the new year. Also, if people say that Tony Khan does not scout the women's side of wrestling as well as he should. I agree. And here's an anecdote, because if you do not know, Roxy was the champion, was the Ring of Honor Women's Champion before it disbanded, and now she's Roxanne Perez, who's about to be probably win maybe the main event of the NXT pay per view.
Yeah.
Yeah. So big miss there not to sign her. She was, if you just watched even one match of her in Ring of Honor, you knew she was something special. So, and then, but the match, I think you're spot on. I agree with you. I think it'd be good for both of them, because Mercedes might be able to, I think she works better as a heel character anyway. And, you don't want her to be, I'd use her as a elevated Marina Shafir, who's like the second for a real heel. Like if she's like the bouncer for the baddies or something, I think that could work, or whatever, right? You have, if her and Britt align, whatever, that could be a refresh in her character too, which I think could be useful. And getting it on someone new like Athena and having stories based on her and people going after her as a badass heel, I think works really well. So, and then I'm trying to think too, like, I think Athena really popped in AEW for me. I'm trying to remember the match. It was a tag match kind of recently. It was, was it her and Willow versus Jamie and Britt? Was that? I don't know. It happened a couple weeks ago, but like I was like, oh, what? She was still a baby face. But I was like, this is like the first time I felt like Athena has been like the Ember Moon from 2017, 2018, that was like going to be the biggest star in WWE when we saw her. And so that was a positive sign. And this character change, I think, is also positive. So maybe for the match itself, I'm not like super jazzed for, but the result and where it's going, I think could be pretty positive for both of them.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully it's just something positive for the women. I can't say women's division because it's the women under the Tony Khan umbrella of Boogie. But you're totally right in the point. Like on Roxy, there's a few people that I see, women that aren't with AEW, or like where Tony had the chance, and I was just like, who is advising him on like who to take and who not to? It's wild. But then we have the Ring of Honor World Television Champion, Samoa Joe, who's also our TNT champion, versus Juice Robinson. Now, I'm pretty sure I heard you on Wrestling Latin America being like positive on this. Man, I think this is so random. Like Juice, I know that Juice issued a challenge. He wants to be the king of TV, so he's coming after Samoa Joe. I just feel, and like that was a pre-tape, so I just felt like Juice was an odd choice. Like we have seen him on AEW before, but Samoa Joe, he's on Dynamite. He has this match with Darby Allin that I think is the best match that Joe's done in AEW, and I might be able to like stretch that further on the timeline of like recent Samoa Joe. And he's in this feud with Wardlow. He's holding 2 belts. So it does to me, I almost thought at one point, is he holding 2 belts so they can merge them? And Tony's like been pulled back on the belt thing. But now that he's basically hinting that he's got some kind of deal, I don't think he's merging any titles. I think that was just a dream of mine. But yeah, this just makes me feel like Juice is like a random challenger. And he's someone that he does have a name value, like to a certain type of fan. And then, to another type of fan, if they can really like think hard in the back of their brain, they'll remember him from NXT. But yeah, I just think it's an odd way to bring him in. I don't know. What do you think? You seem to be way more pro-Juice than I am.
Well, I wonder, because it was like 5 days ago, so my brain, I can't remember exactly what I said. I thought that I was upset that I thought this should be Wardlow. Now, maybe I'm mistaken. I talk about a lot of wrestling, but yeah, I mean, I think for maybe the match itself, I'm more positive on it being a good match, bell to bell, is probably where I came from, because I think Juice has wrestled a lot of guys in like the G1 per se, like a Great O'Khan type, or those bigger guys that, not that Joe works the same style, but Juice can basically get chopped for 10 minutes and pop back up, be kind of annoying, and then have a muscle buster hit on him, and it can be a good time. But yeah, all the other things around it, I agree with you 100%. It is, again, just like the Shane Taylor Swerve in our Glory match. It feels like a pocket universe of kind of a pocket universe, right? Like this ROH stuff has not been totally, cut off from AEW, but this show feels like it is like totally like, wrestling is all exhibition. It's all predetermined anyway, but this feels like preseason wrestling. Like this doesn't matter. Like if Juice did win, it wouldn't even matter. And Wardlow should be in the spot. He even attacked Joe on Wednesday, and you get no mention of Juice besides maybe building up the show. So all that is bad. And I think the match itself should be good, but it's just like some other matches we'll talk about later, especially what I think will probably be the main event, like being added last second, and you have no story besides like, hey, remember the last time these people fought? Wasn't that great? There's your match. Like, that's kind of the same build for everything. And it just tells you also, like we talked about the women's match, I think that's kind of up in the air, not guaranteed to go a certain way. I think also the world title is kind of, you can debate either way, but this is like the ultimate foregone conclusion of a match, and Joe's going to win, which I think is always a negative on a pay-per-view to have such slam dunk, no questions asked that the champion's going to win. So
I think you're so right in saying that it just doesn't mean anything. Like even if it is a 5-star match, I mean the only benefit if it was a 5-star like blow away match, right? Which I don't think it's gonna be. But hypothetically, the only thing that would put it in like match of the year list would be the fact that it happened in December, so we're all still thinking about it. Because if they had a blow away amazing match in February, because there was nothing behind it and like it was inconsequential, whatever, like no storyline, no one would remember it by the end of the year. Like it would just be so like forgotten. So yeah, they just pulled anyone out of a hat here, and Juice must have been, I don't know, like carrying Tony Storm's bags when like Tony Khan was putting together this card, and he looked up and he was like, "That's my guy.
Yeah,
that's my guy."
Yeah, that's a hey, Tony, you're gonna drop the title, but I'm gonna give your. Are they married or are they just together? I don't know, but whatever. Get your significant other a payday. So there's your consolation prize.
So next match I'm going to talk about, I'm actually going to change my order so I don't end up talking about too many of the same people like all in one go. We're going to talk about Daniel Garcia versus Wheeler Yuta, and I will remember to put the picture of this one up. Where are the boys? Here they are. Daniel Garcia, Wheeler Yuta. This is for the pure title. I have a lot to talk about on this one. I think there's many different issues. Before we get to the match, I want to know, as Ring of Tyler, where do you stand on the pure title? Do you think it's a good? Like, do you think pure match rules are good? I will tell you that Benno always says pure matches are good in spite of the pure rules, not because of them. Is that a take that you agree with?
Yeah, I would say, like, for my wrestling preference in general, I'm much more of a Death Triangle and the Elite like style of match. Like, is kind of would be my preferred, and then probably like a death match, like a GCW Nick Gage death match is probably, those are like my two, like that does really get me jazzed up. In a pure rules match, like a Jonathan Gresham Lee Moriarty match on the indie scene that goes 40 minutes is like something I respect. But like I don't like love watching. I might check my phone in the middle because there's certain spots that are slow. So yes, in general, I would say that I would agree that they are good despite the rules, and I think they're a pretty bad live product, especially when they don't explain it to the live audience, and it might be something new for them that they are just absolutely shocked about. As my dog's so crazy in the background, I apologize. So, but yes, I would agree. I think it's good in theory, but it's not the most exciting thing on TV. It's a big lift for the commentators. But Rick Abani and company do a good job doing that. So, but not my cup of tea per se.
Well, into the actual match, Garcia and Wheeler Yuta, and I don't know, man. Like the Garcia. So I always like to have like someone that I call my boy, like a young wrestler that I've decided to support that I wasn't that familiar with before. And originally, when AEW first started, I handpicked Sammy Guevara as my boy, and boy, did I end up regretting that one. So because I was like championing this guy so hard. I was like, give this guy more, like let him have a run, let him be solo. Find out, like, no, like that was the wrong choice. So I dumped him, and then went for Daniel Garcia because I thought he was great. And he was like, when he came into the company, the detractors were like, this Garcia guy's being shoved down our throats. And like, he really was. But I thought he was really good, so I didn't mind it. I thought like it was great, and it was great to see them build someone up. And then we have like, he gets in the JS. I actually loved him being unveiled as a member of the JS. I thought that was just great. And I actually think it's been so beneficial to him because I think there are some areas that he's lacking in as far as personality and presentation. And I think that he was put in a good situation to grow by being in that group. And I think, getting to work with Jericho is a great thing, especially if you're like not the best or most confident talker. I think he can really help you. So I think that was all really great. Then he had this storyline with Jericho, him, being a wrestler, not a sports entertainer. We had everyone behind that. They were chanting for him that he was a wrestler. And I just don't know what went on here. that just dropped one day completely. Like, it felt like there was like a custody battle between Jericho and Bryan. And it felt like Garcia just turned around and was like, you know what, guys, like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go back in the JS. It's cool. And that was it. And then even like at All In, Sammy is in this 4-way, and they're like teasing that he'll, like turn on Jericho or like disrespect him, try and take the pin, whatever. It's like, but imagine if Daniel Garcia was in this match being the one doing that, like considering the other story. And I just don't understand. And then when I was at Dynamite, I saw Garcia out there with the JS, and I tweeted something like, glad to see Garcia here. I was about to file a missing person report. And someone replied to me, well, you obviously don't watch Dark. And the thing is, no, I don't. I don't really. But why would I be tuning into Dark to see Daniel Garcia that I was used to seeing in like this great big storyline in Dynamite? So can you explain to me what happened to Daniel Garcia? That's
a big ask, I would say. I would say what happened with Daniel Garcia was the same thing that happened to Jamie Hayter around the same time, where it looked like we were going to get the split from Britt, and we're going to tell that story, and then both were dropped basically on the same episode of Dynamite, it seemed like. And yeah, I have no idea. It's some combination of, hey, I got to have someone be the pure champion, have that match at ROH, and someone's got to be the world champion. It seemed easy to me to have Daniel Garcia taking on Chris Jericho as the main event of this pay-per-view. That felt more than enough for me. And like you said, the Bryan Danielson getting them to chant that they wanted them to team up together. I don't know if it was like, because this is all after. Is this before or after All Out? What we're talking about.
Well, the Danielson Garcia stuff is before.
Before, yes. It's after.
Yeah, no, it's after. Yeah, I was thinking of Full Gear. It's at Full Gear. They had the 4-way.
Yeah, because I was thinking maybe the stuff with Punk and the Elite maybe changed things, but it wouldn't affect anything there. So I have no idea. It was like they had the idea to do it, and I don't know. It was just like I was thinking maybe did Daniel Garcia get in a fight with Andrade backstage, and then that his push got canceled, and we just didn't get that reported, or what? But
Andrade fight bit though.
Yeah,
I have to say, like, it's like an extra layer because it feels like Sammy's taken a spot, in the JS, which is kind of frustrating for me because Sammy had his go at being Jericho's guy in the inner circle. He had that, and like, let's give that to someone else. And I thought, Garcia was like getting that. And then Sammy's come in, and then they had that match which happened when Sammy had the fight with Andrade. So it's like an extra wrinkle of like, what did Garcia do wrong that Sammy, this guy that's like, even if Sammy didn't throw a punch, I mean, his tweets about like he was instigating, and like he gets this, and Garcia, I don't know. I really don't know, and I feel like not enough people talk about why Garcia got recast, by as Sammy Guevara, like in this.
Yeah. Oh, and like even like Jake Hager got raised up in the JAS because he had a purple bucket cap, right? That's more of a story than Daniel Garcia.
Garcia was the guy who originally had trendy hats.
Yeah, he had the Kangol, right? The backwards Kangol. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what's up.
Not even the main hat guy.
Yeah. So it's like the thing is, there's just like 40 crazier things going on at AEW at any given time that people like have outs in their contract just because they want to, or they are biting people, or they're fighting, or whatever. And the Daniel Garcia thing, like he didn't make a big stink about it on Twitter, so no one's talking about it. He's not leaking to somebody.
I'm talking about it.
I know, but like he's not leaking to people like us to then like report a story about Daniel Garcia was taken off the card because he was 5 minutes late for a meeting, while why VPs are fighting people in the back room and they get to come back and do 7 matches on Dynamite. So I don't know what it is. I'm sure when he has a podcast with Conrad Thompson in 15 years, then we'll hear the story. But
like 30, I might be dead by then. Like, I'm like the meme of that person like sitting alone in the park, and like my sign says, "Ask me about Daniel Garcia."
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and the thing about all this is like, all this is like superseding this match, right? Because like this match should be a pretty good story of that style that you asked me about. Like, do I like it? Do I not like? And like Yuta was in that pure tournament that Ring of Honor did when they came back from the pandemic. Daniel Garcia was not involved, but like all this around it is why this match, like you could have said this match first and I would be like, yeah, I get it. Like I'd probably rather watch Swerve in Our Glory versus Shane Taylor Promotions than this, not from an in-ring standpoint, but from like, there's literally no build. Like every single thing has been like Claudio Jericho. And then it's also like, hey, but remember, Daniel Garcia, you have to fight me, Wheeler Yuta. Like, don't forget about it. Like that's been the build of this feud. It's crazy.
It's like, they've had great matches before, and I think they're great and well suited to each other. I just can't get over the hurdle of like what happened to Garcia, like what Garcia like did wrong. I wish I had asked that. I didn't have the nerve to ask on the call. Just an update on Garcia, please. Like what happened? And it's like there's been the JS Blackpool Combat Club thing has been going on for like such a long time, and I have like really enjoyed the feud. Like it's something that I like. I just don't know what happened to Garcia. And at one point I was dumb enough to think that maybe Garcia would one day face Jericho and they'd merge the titles and just get rid of the pure belt. But like I don't think Tony's ever doing that. He's gonna keep every belt. Who do you see winning?
Yeah, so and this will kind of lead into the world title analysis as well. But John Moxley said, this Saturday is the end of BCC and JAS. Hopefully, I've also enjoyed the feud, but it has been too long, and now it would be good to, you can always come back to it if you want to. But for that reason, I don't know. This is happening before the main event. I think this can be a little bit of. There's always on every Tony Khan show. There's always like one canary in the coal mine match for the world title. And I think this is it, obviously, because I think it's probably going to be on. I don't know. You could do either way here, right? If Garcia's the only person in JAS with a belt, that's its own story. But Blackpool Combat Club kind of shutting the door on JAS completely, and then there being some desertion from within because they lost all their belts, I think is a better way to tell the story. Yeah. So I guess I'd go with Yuta here. But again, it doesn't like entirely matter like who does win. Like if I bet if you watch only AEW, I wonder what the over under you put on number of weeks before if you didn't go online, if you weren't on Squared Circle on Reddit, if you're just watching Dynamite, let's say, how many weeks would it take for you to realize who won this title, this match? Like 8.5 weeks would probably be the over under. So like for that reason, it's like not super crucial, but I'll go with Wheeler Yuta just because I think that makes more sense storyline wise.
Just a hypothetical question. Obviously, this Daniel Garcia thing probably isn't keeping you awake at night like it is me, and it really is. But if Jericho was to retain and Garcia was to lose, and then with the end of the JS Blackpool Combat Club thing, they started up Jericho and Garcia feuding again. Would you accept that as, okay, like, thanks, I'm glad you brought it back? Or would you be like me, who's like, I feel like the moments kind of passed because you had such great, like, you had everything behind you. Another like thing in this, not to turn this into like a podcast just about Daniel Garcia, was that when he turned back to Jericho, they did do it in Canada, where everyone was just like, great idea, like great. And I thought that was pretty like wild as well, because if you'd done it anywhere else, like the fans would have booed because they wanted him to be a wrestler, but in Canada, no one was booing Jericho, so this became like a babyface decision to be a sports entertainer as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's like an AEW problem in general, right? It's like leaning into people in their home territory when they're heels and like getting good reactions when it's like it's derailing. Like MJF is the king of that, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if that did happen, like I would not be fulfilled with that decision. The only way to like get 70% of the enthusiasm that Daniel Garcia had is like if he, turns on Jericho because he learned the error of his ways because he lost to a wrestler, right? Yeah. And someone in the Blackpool Combat Club. He then aligns with Bryan Danielson to help him against MJF, whatever. If I assume MJF will have some minions to attack against him. But then that feels like the watered down version of what could have been of him and Bryan Danielson going and wrestling FTR in this pay-per-view or something, which would have been way better. And it feels like now at this point, he's kind of got to ride this out with Jericho and turn when it makes sense to make him, because, Jake Hager 2.0, Sammy Guevara, even like, I think Garcia still has the most upside of that group long term. So him being the one to kind of turn on Jericho and win that feud is the best situation. So doing that in a longer term way is better than hot-shotting it. So, who knows? I know one thing for sure. I think you care more about Daniel Garcia than anyone at AEW does. And that's not named Daniel Garcia. So I wouldn't like hold your breath too much on the good booking for him.
Doesn't make sense because he was so highly featured.
I know.
When no one gave cared at all about him, he was like just shoved down our throats, and then all of a sudden when it got really tasty, they were like, you can't have that anymore.
It feels, I mean, this is like apples and Volkswagens comparison here, but it feels a little bit like Zack Ryder when he had his rise to power when he did, was it like 2013, whatever. He's doing his YouTube show, and he is, then Kane's throwing him off a wheelchair off a loading dock, and he was just he wasn't a guy that Vince wanted to get over, so they crushed him. And that's like what it feels like, is like a guy who Vince, Tony, whatever, didn't build and got too hot, and then you kind of cool him back down for some reason. So I don't know if it's either got to be behavioral or someone got in Tony's ear of like, you didn't build this guy. I don't know. It is a wild, underrated story of 2022 that would be good to get some reporting. Maybe you can write something about it and get in the news breaking business yourself.
Tell you what, in 20 years, I'm gonna write Pure Wrestler, the Daniel Garcia story. It would be all about it. But what was I gonna say? Well, you were saying about him, it feels like the kids. Yes, maybe it's because he's the dude's too cool for Twitter. Do you know that he tweets and then he deletes everything?
Oh, really? Is it like Mark Cuban had like it's not Telegram or Signal, but it was something like that where you would send a message and it would like delete after 24 hours. It was like a social media like that. Maybe he just believes in that method, and yeah,
Yeah.
maybe that's why. Maybe because he doesn't tweet and reply random, big boy wrestling 7711372, and when they complain about the show and he doesn't retweet them, maybe Tony Khan's not for that. So,
Yeah. Side note on the AEW YouTubers, obviously Sammy does a show, but I was watching Hey EW with RJ City the other day. I really love it. That's someone that's underutilized.
Yes, for sure.
For sure. And I was watching him with 2.0, two more of my faves, and they were saying that JR told them to not do YouTube now because this was serious stuff. That's a bad take by JR. It's 2022,
Yeah, and who knows? Like that's why, like I had one of the theories. It's like maybe someone got in Tony's ear and was like, "Hey, this is like not." I think that would not be JR's take because JR seems to like a person like Daniel Garcia.
Yeah,
but you never know. Like JR, like you've seen who he's signed over the years in the peak WWE and who he didn't, and
yeah,
I don't think Garcia fits his like MO. From what he signed. So maybe something like that happened. Maybe he's like not on, or someone that is on social media a lot. And it's like, this guy's not anything on social media. He's worthless.
Not a fucking Rampage poster. How can we push him?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's wild, and the news will come out. And, I just think over the last month this year, it's been, the honeymoon phase has been over with the management of Tony Khan, and he's kind of talked about some things like that on the call recently on things in his personal life, but still it's like that's just like again like the 39th most unexplainable thing that happened this year from a management standpoint. So I think that's why it got buried the way it did. So I moved it up one peg. I said 40 things were crazier than now it's only 38, so moved up two. So you've convinced me. I've moved it up my power rankings of crazy things.
To me for long enough, it will be number one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
If Daniel Garcia needs an advocate, like I'm here trying to get to the bottom of this. I think Wheeler Yuta is going to win as well, because with the the Blackpool Combat Club dissolving, which was allegedly all so that John Moxley and Bryan Danielson and Claudio could all come to the realization that they can care for Daniel Garcia. They don't need William Regal, Granddad's help. Like they can do it on their own. They can raise a child. So I think him like getting a belt out of that is probably, makes kind of sense, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, but hopefully we'll get something for Garcia out of this. I mean, personally, I would just main event with Garcia holding the belt high and, kicking Sammy Guevara or something. Just,
Yeah, like down the line, or for this show, that's what you would have built. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, like just both. Like, just I just want this guy to get something.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I was gonna do that one after the one I'm gonna do now, but I thought we'll split up the talking about it. So let's talk about some different people.
Okay.
Let's talk about FTR and the Briscoes, who are having a double dog collar match, which sounds extreme. And this was, if there was ever like a tacked on announcement, it was this. Like at the end of Dynamite, they have this great match with the Acclaimed. They lose. FTR. I will like explicitly state I'm a huge FTR fan, and I think they're the best in the world tag team. So I'm one of those people. But they have this great match with the Acclaim, and then everyone's saying FTR need to be in the pay-per-view. Of course they were going to be in the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, and of course they're fighting the Briscoes again. Briscoes who aren't allowed on TBS, so they use the Ass Boys to deliver messages. It appears it's a dog collar match, which. Like they've had two matches before, so there's a rivalry there. There's a feud there. It's heated, whatever. But because of the situation with the Briscoes, if I am just a Dynamite Rampage viewer, I've seen none of this. I've never even seen what these Briscoe guys look like. So it seems like a very like extreme match to go to with what is essentially no story, like to your average viewer. I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be really brutal, and I think. The winner might show where Tony's deal is if he's got one for Ring of Honor too, But yeah, and I also think there's a chance it could main event just because it'll be messy, and it is, whether it's messy or not. Like we saw at Revolution, it is hard to follow a dog collar match because MJF and Punk did it, and after that, we were all like emotionally spent, and we had seen a lot of gore that night, and I think that's going to happen here. But how do you feel about this match and the last minute edition? I laughed when you and Zach were talking about this earlier tonight, but I think it was Zach that said like this is to justify like the $40 price tag. They just throw in a dog collar match here.
Yeah, I mean that's what it feels like. I did the preview for Dynamite yesterday, and I kind of just asked the people watching live to comment, like, "Are you going to buy the show?"
Yeah.
And I got like 14 responses, and 12 of them were no, and 2 of them were, "I'm going to watch it, but I'm going to stream it illegally," which is funny to just put out there with your user profile. I think that's a bad idea, but that's kind of, that's a lot of wrestling. When a show does X number of buys, you can probably triple that of the amount of people that probably legally streamed it, if not more, to get the content view there. But this feels like, I mean, it's weird. This whole thing with the FTR, that's a whole 2-hour podcast alone in 2022. That's above Daniel Garcia, in my opinion, on the insanity of, go ahead.
I guess the general public, it would be above Daniel Garcia.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that not enough people talk about the FTR stuff, even though it seems like everyone's talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like obvious what's happening, but it's like it's like Miro is kind of in that, I guess, more Daniel Garcia boat too, of like, it's just like strange to essentially, they picked the wrong side in that in that like little proxy war, and they got basically taken off TV for it. And I don't know, it's like a couple tweets here and there. It's just like very thin skin of like, you work with these people and they could have gotten you tons of great matches. If you weren't going to re-sign them, you still have them for what, 4 more months? I think it's April is when their deal's up. So it's like you wasted tons of time when you had these people and you're paying them anyway. Very strange. I mean, Garcia's not the same situation, but it's like you're still paying the guy and you had something go with him and then you didn't utilize it. So
I think FTR, they're so vocally friends with CM Punk. They love CM Punk. It's probably really bit them in the ass. But I think if they leave and they go back to WWE, I think that's actually like really sad, and it's like a bit of an indictment on the tag team division in AEW, because WWE, especially with the tag teams, has felt like cartoony and like they don't care about tag teams. Basically, like that's it. Like there's New Day being together forever, but it's only in recent years that they've got better with what we've seen, like with the Usos, and stuff like that. But I know when I interviewed FTR, which was probably about 2 years ago now, like they were very in to the idea of like, they grew up watching tag teams, thinking that tag teams were best friends in real life, like buying into that, like thinking like tag teams like were like Bert and Ernie, living together, doing everything together. And like that, I thought that was like really sweet. And they were very, against the idea that like WWE always wants to just like split you up. And then they go to AEW, which is the promotion that's more like, I don't want to say more serious, but I think you know what I mean. When it comes to like certain presentations and stuff and what we thought was going to happen. And it's sad that they couldn't find a place in a company like that, especially when an actual tag team is one of the EVPs. But I'm not sure if they're tag team EVPs for everyone or maybe just for one tag team. But like there's something there that is kind of a sad story, that if FTR feel this way, that they might not stick around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obvious that is the way they feel, and they're not going to stick around. And it feels mutual though, which is like the part that like if you're talent and you're not happy with certain things, like that's a personal choice, and like you can't really begrudge anyone for like liking or not liking certain things. But like when it's more of an indictment on management for me, and I'm like, I guess if you were to like to be in the camp of the sides, which I'm glad we're not really talking about that as much. I'm bringing it up, but like, I was probably a little less on the Punk and FTR side than the other side. I think everyone was like out of line in certain ways there, but like, if you're in charge of that and you're like letting that get ahead of like putting out good stuff in front of the viewing audience and putting it in the ring, that's a big problem. And that's what like the case study of FTR is in the latter half of 2022 is like the hottest thing that you had in your entire company, besides, you know, a John Moxley who was kind of not supposed to be champion and going on a great run. Those two things were the hot things this summer. And then to like just douse one for personal reasons is like insane. And then when calling on them to like save your pay-per-view, which is what this feels like, and not building anything is like, it's insane. And I mean, it's probably like I've said lots of times on my show, it's probably what I would do if I was running a company. I'd probably be petty with people that piss me off and not be a great person, and then be like, oh crap, I got to sell the show. And these guys are obviously the guys that do it. Like, hey, you know, whatever, I'll give you 10% of the proceeds of the card if you come and do it, whatever. But like, and again, just like the previous thing, all of this is, you know, in lieu of a great match. There's no build. If you don't watch Ring of Honor, you have no idea who the Briscoes are. If you Google them, you're probably not going to like what you see, and that's probably not going to help you buy the show, because you probably see like why they're not allowed on TBS. And you know, it is what it is. And then from like the match format itself, I'm surprised this was not a ladder war. That's like kind of the Ring of Honor tradition to do like the third match is to do, you know, it's basically just a ladder match. But you know, maybe FTR were like, hey, we'll do this, but like I don't want to jump off stuff. Just we'll blade, and that's fine. I'll sign up for that. But that's what it feels like. I mean, like the last match. Yeah, basically. And you know, like the Bucks' last match in Sinclair owned Ring of Honor was a ladder war with the Briscoes. So if this is their last match in Ring of Honor, it feels, you know, like kind of a good send off within the Ring of Honor era. But I don't know. I would like your pick first, because if they're here till April, go ahead. I don't know what to pick. So,
I think this is hard because, you know, I'm thinking about this, whatever Tony's announcement is.
Yeah.
And if it's an announcement with someone that will let the Briscoes on TV, I say the belts go to the Briscoes, and then we end up with like a series between FTR and the Acclaimed, where we think it's more likely that FTR could win. Like, I think Tony would rather have the ROH belt off them when they take the AEW one, that kind of thing. Or he maybe even does end up giving FTR like a little goodbye title run or something, because he realizes that they're just so great. But if we're going, you know, to where we've been and Briscoes are not allowed on TBS and whatever, I would, you know, keep it on FTR. But if the Briscoes, because he has the Briscoes under contract, right? He said that in Ring of Honor contract. I'm not really sure what they can do if they're not champions. Like, they're just going to end up like facing FTR forever until either leave or the Briscoes are allowed on TV. So, I mean, it's a really tough one, and I think it's just tough to think about like any result of a Briscoes match, not knowing what the status is of Ring of Honor having shows, and knowing that they can't, you know, be on TV doing proper storylines anyway. It seems like the obvious thing is just to say, well, they're going to lose because of all that. But if we had the future of what Tony's going to announce, maybe we could make a more informed decision. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. Thank you for answering that, because you gave me some good points to think about. I think like this result is a proxy for like what kind of announcement we're going to get about Ring of Honor. Because if the Briscoes win, then there's something that's coming, and if not, they might be a little bit more of a vague announcement that something's coming down the line, like we've heard a couple times from Tony. But yeah, I mean, at some point you would have to think that these belts have to start coming off of FTR if they are kind of headed for the door, as I think they are, probably to WWE. So this would make sense. There's also another Ring of Honor show before that, so you could do that there. But you know, if you have the Briscoes under contract, do you really want them losing 3 times in a row to a team that's not going to be around when they're going to be always be a top 2 tag team in that division? No, probably not. So I would lean Briscoes here, for just thinking there's going to be a streaming announcement or a broadcasting announcement. And if you're FTR, the Briscoes have owned Ring of Honor for the entire run of the company's history, and I know they're aware of that. They're obviously scholars of wrestling, new and old. So if I'm them and I respect Ring of Honor, who else to drop it to than the guys that have been running that company since the beginning. So I think that's, at least for them, like a nice poetic way to go out if this is their last Ring of Honor show. For
Does it mean
what's that? Sorry.
Is it going on last, do you think?
Oh, it almost has to, right? I mean, this has like...
He loves the title going on last, like even when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, so the first pay-per-view, it was Gresham and Claudio, right? Was the first Ring of Honor pay-per-view because Claudio got it off of Gresham, or no, that was
the one before this, was it?
Yeah, so Final Battle, or the first one was like the WrestleMania weekend. That was kind of like the weird, hey, I just bought it and there's a pay-per-view in a week sort of thing. So the one after that is
me. That's what it's like.
Yeah, that's where Gresham dropped to Claudio in that first like full, whatever build to that.
And it was first match of the night, and Gresham was not having it.
Yeah, and that's why. And then he left the company because he's not. So there's precedent within Ring of Honor for that to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think Tony respects that belt like he respects his own AEW World Title. So it just, the way the match, it's the seller of the pay-per-view. It's probably going to go the longest. It's going to be an emotional letdown. Like Claudio and Jericho is going to be totally fine, but it's going to be Jericho doing his things, Claudio spinning Jericho in the ring. And like, there's just like, if that's after this, it's going to be like, take a whole star off of that match just from how you're feeling emotionally as a consumer. So I think it almost has to go on last as a result.
Yeah. I don't think Claudio and Jericho are going to want, to follow it because, why would they? Even if this dog collar match is terrible, it's still a spectacle and you don't want to follow a spectacle. And I do think like that hurt, Revolution. I would have just put Punk and MJF last in Revolution and like ended the pay-per-view with Punk covered in blood, like swinging a dog collar. I don't know why even pretend that that's not the main event. I know like the belt is, but why pretend? And I think he's less likely to do it here. I think he'll probably put this on last, and even so he doesn't even have to clean the ring or anything. We can just get right off the air. So finally, we have Chris Jericho and Claudio Castagnoli for the Ring of Honor World Title. So this is another one. So I decided to switch up my order so that we didn't talk. So I didn't end up talking about Garcia through 2 segments in a row. I'll try not to talk about it now, though. But I've really loved Jericho's run as the Ring of Honor World Champion. I think he's done great. I really do, and I think that it was. I think it was a very good idea by Tony to put the belt on him. Like Tony, has bought Ring of Honor. He's bringing in all these people. He's bringing in all these belts, and then like the decision to take the world title and put it on one of the most famous people you have under contract, I think is actually a really good idea. Did kind of feel sorry for Claudio because he didn't have much of a run with that belt at all after taking it from Gresham and then making like a big deal about how he not won a singles title, and then it didn't really amount to much. But Jericho's done great with it. I have loved all his matches that he's had as Ring of Honor champion. I think all his opponents have been great except one, but compression socks, what can you do? But it's been so good, and I just feel like I wanted like a different match for this because Claudio, we've seen him face Claudio. He took the belt off Claudio. Even if you want to keep JS and Blackpool Combat Club going, maybe him and Danielson may felt like fresher than him and Claudio. So I've loved Jericho's run. He's done a great job as champion. He's had great matches. I think it's just Claudio's maybe the wrong opponent, and I also think this is a hard one to call, but we'll get into that. But what do you think about Jericho as the Ring of Honor champion? Ring of Jericho. Ring of title.
The Ocho. Yeah, I think it's been great. Like you said, I think it's like there's been a lot of discourse, most of it negative about Ring of Honor and AEW. We talked about it at the top of the show here, but like I have not heard one person be like, putting that belt on Jericho, what a disaster. That totally
you can't say that. You could not say that. Yeah.
So like that has never been the issue. That's been the best booking decision probably in the history of that, and FTR being the tag champions. Like on paper, very stacked lineup. Samoa Joe, right?
Yeah.
That's like, it's just like the usage and where they're, what's important in the hierarchy of it, all that stuff is like the choices of who have been carrying these titles is like good on paper to be like, this is a real brand. This is the most powerful this brand has been in 10, 15 years because of
Yeah.
who's carrying it. But like, so yeah, I think it's been great. I've always thought this is a little bit of a thank you to Jericho for sticking around after the All Out stuff, because he was supposed to go on tour and kind of be, not absent but not be around as much. And him and Moxley stuck around and kind of held the fort down those couple of weeks. And this has always seemed to me be more of a thank you and a way to shop Ring of Honor to somebody. So if that worked, great. The value of Jericho's there. So all of that's been great. I think, yeah, like you said, I mean, they've all been great. Jericho's been the best part about, if you're like a wrestler today and you want to wrestle into your late 40s, early 50s, the things to do are get enough power to kind of influence what you do, and always work with someone like way super talented and can, Jericho is very talented for being a 52-year-old man. He's always been a talented wrestler and and sports entertainer, I should say. But putting yourself in the ring with so many different styles and people that excel at what they do and just make you look good at, by being in the ring with them has been, people, I think, it subconsciously if you don't know it, in your mind, but he's been such a case study on how to age gracefully in modern pro wrestling. So that this just been another thing of that, him reinventing himself, whatever. So that's enough gushing about Jericho on my side. But I think the match is probably easier to call. And again, it's because it's a meta reason. And again, I could be totally wrong. I haven't looked up betting odds. I don't know if you ever look up betting odds. It kind of ruins the show.
Never looked up betting odds.
So it's more legal here in the States now. It's been legal over there for you for a while. So you can't really bet it much, but I haven't looked. But I think this is going Claudio's way for a number of reasons. I think the big push about ROH and AEW being separate, there being, rosters laid out, there's going to be an announcement. If you're Tony Khan and you run AEW, like, no offense to Claudio, but I'd much rather have Claudio anchoring Ring of Honor, the new product, and have Jericho on Wednesday night, if people singing his theme song, than being put on some other sort of streaming service. So I think
Jericho's not going to wrestle on YouTube.
No, definitely not. So if there is a true break here, Jericho is not going to be the guy to carry that. He's got his 8th world title. He wants that. He's been a world champion in many different companies and different brands, and he's accomplished all of that stuff. And he can now move on to telling a story to get to Stadium Stampede 4 or 5, whatever. That's his main goal, right? Is to make sure his group is tight and he gets involved with another group, has a blood and guts match, and has a Stadium Stampede match. That's what he cares about more than defending this title on Honor Club or Max or anything like that.
On Honor Club. I feel like, I think that I don't know. I'm really torn, because I think that the whole thing with the deal, I totally agree. Like, if the deal's not great, Jericho's not gonna be on it. Just give it to Claudio. You don't want to take Jericho off Dynamite as well, because everything, the song, everything, he's a big attraction to the show. The only thing that makes me think maybe it isn't Claudio is just because I feel like it's anticlimactic that Claudio is the one that beats him after this great reign, where he had so many great matches, and it was like exciting to think who would be next. And no, we never did get Low-Ki, or Nigel coming in. So for me, Claudio is just like an anticlimax to the whole thing, but I can see it's happening. He's had it for a while now, and Claudio, the stipulation as well, we didn't mention, if Claudio loses, he's joining the JAS, and that is not something I think they should do to Claudio, because he is a guy that was badly booked by WWE for years, and I don't think the thing to do to him is then put him in a hat basically with Jake Hager. I thought it was so funny on Dynamite when they were in the ring together and the crowd are chanting "We the People," and this is something that AEW has booked to have them together and has referenced that they were together. And you think back to the first Dynamite when Hager came out and we heard We the People, and Jericho is like, that's bad creative, like we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And we're 3 years on, and we are doing that now because we're getting more WWE people that, you know, like we're at that point. But yeah, I was so strong on Jericho's gonna win. But I think once Tony said that, like, I'm gonna announce something, it kind of pushed me more to Claudio taking it. But if he loses it, like, God, it has been like one hell of a run, you know, for someone in their early 50s doing the like his whole, you know, Jericho's had a great year in ring. He's has many of my like top 5 for 10, sorry, like favorite matches of the year. It's just been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, on the stipulation thing, thank you for bringing that up, because that was like my main case earlier today. Was that like in AEW, whatever John Moxley like says is I pretty much take as law that he's not BSing, because he's not scripted. So he's like kind of the filter of like what works and what doesn't work in AEW for me. And him saying like Saturday, this is it. Like the BCC and the JAS are done feuding after Saturday, and like the stipulation of Claudio then joining JAS, like that is impossible for it to stop happening if he's with them, right? So that is like the storyline narrative that pushes me in that Claudio direction, and then the meta stuff too. Does it like, is that the way that this run should end? I don't think so at all. This should easily, I'll speak for you here, Stephanie. This should have been Daniel Garcia and Chris Jericho. It should have been Daniel Garcia to beat Jericho, prove that pro wrestling beats sports entertainment, which is like the whole goal of that heel faction, that sports entertainment is wrong and pro wrestling is right. And then that just got kind of lost in the sauce. So that's, you know, unfortunate. But you know, here we are. And I would like ask you this question. You don't have to even answer it, but like, if you can ask people if you want or whatever, but like, do you think this is Chris Jericho's last world title in his career? Because like, I would say no, which is crazy for someone that's 52, but like, I don't know what it would be. There's 1,000 world titles, I guess, technically, right?
Yeah.
So, but like, I don't think this is the end for him being a world champion.
I don't think it's the end for him either. I think firstly, like 10's a round number, and yet you're so close at 8. You know, like you're so close. And I think I mean, this has been kind of a good thing for him to do. You know, go after like the Ring of Honor title. Like it's been cool. I'm not sure like what other ones he could try and get. I think I would not like it if he went to Impact though, because there's just I would be like, oh, this is beneath him though. You know what I mean? Like, but that would be another one, you know, to have in his record of titles. But I don't think this is the last world title. Like, I think he's gonna end up wrestling for longer than people think, because if you look at like, you know, 2021 and like towards the end of 2021 and how he was then, and then how he came back this year and like wrestling like so great and like looking better and everything. It's just, you know, it's like he's just found another like fountain of youth or something. But yeah, it's crazy though, like how long the Blackpool Combat Club JS thing has been going on, because I just like suddenly remembered that I was at Blood and Guts. And the whole like Eddie, if we want to talk about drop storylines, so this might be number 50 on the list. Claudio and Eddie Kingston, Blood and Guts, when Eddie was furious that Claudio got the win instead of him, and when it was Eddie's like lifelong dream to be the one to put Jericho away, and it was taken from him, and then the follow-up just didn't. You know, that's enough. Like, we got to make a list.
Yeah, and not a you just made the list, but
a list of things I need follow up on. You know.
Yeah. Well, when you get the Tony Khan interview, you got to have like all of it ready and be like, you know, he won't. You do it in the middle, so he's like, you know, hey, we got a half hour. Do it like at the 10-minute mark, so he's like too nice and like has to like deflect 50 questions about why storylines have fallen off the face of the earth and why you hate Eddie Kingston and Daniel Garcia so much.
I know what he'd be expecting is not like dissecting Daniel Garcia's booking, you know, like. But I think it is going to be a really good match, and I think. Do you think there's any chance, say Jericho retains? Do you think there's any chance we do a real Tony Khan and like have a surprise, like a next challenger, or like for either of them, like what would you see the direction of the Ring of Honor title going?
Yeah, I mean that would have to be it in the main event, I think, to have like your next fighter appears sort of thing. I'm really bad at guessing that sort of stuff, so I don't want to claim that. And there's very few like people out in the ether that are available to like pick up at this point. So it'd have to probably be a continuation of former Ring of Honor champions he would beat, and I guess Taven is one. He's with the company. He's not on the show for some reason. There's your PCOs. There's Roosh could come from AEW and attack him. There's Bandito. So there's people that are signed, but I don't think any of that is like even like getting like 100 retweets from like a major wrestling thing. Like, oh my God, it's so and so. So I don't know if you have any ideas that you brought it up. Usually when I bring up ideas, I have lots of ideas to ask when I ask the host.
I mean, like, who do you feel as speaking of Tyler? Like, who was the person that you would have loved to have seen challenge Jericho that didn't challenge him? Like, who from the past would you like to see?
Yeah, I mean, your greatest champions are your Danielsons, your Joes, your Punks. But I think if he was aligned differently, and if he was cleared, and this is where he came back, I think if an Adam Cole came in and challenged him, that would be insane. Because I think we're all as fans hoping the best for him, but like there's really no timetable on his return, or if there is a return. So whenever he does do that, like as AEW has not proven this year, like he's got to be a baby face. Like you cannot be trying to make him a heel character, even if he wants to be. So if he came out, if Jericho beat Claudio in the main event, and Adam Cole can come out and be a super baby face and challenge Jericho, and that's like leading into like now you can watch ROH on this platform. Like that is a way to get people on a program and on a platform. So if you're really going to make a big push of it, that's like I think the best thing you can do right now, because Danielson's obviously going to be tied up with MJF. So, but yeah, that'd be my first choice. I think the only 3-time champion in Adam Cole taking on a guy who's trying to be the greatest ROH champion of all time seems like a pretty juicy story to tell, if you're asking me.
I feel like it just made me think when you were saying Adam Cole that if we have something new for Ring of Honor, whether it's streaming or whatever, I think we need a star that's bigger than Claudio, but not as big as Jericho, because we don't want to give him away. And I think like Adam Cole kind of fits into that. Like he's a bigger star and he's more exciting than Claudio. But given like the roster that we have in in AEW, you could spare him, I think, more than Tony would be willing to spare Jericho.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean,
Claudio, who's listening, like, sorry, but
yeah, I mean, I think it is what it is. It's that's baked in at this point. And if you look at Adam Cole, like obviously we didn't see him on the main roster as much. Many jokes have been made, but in NXT, in that environment is similar to what I think ROH would be, a smaller. If it's whatever, if it's live, it's going to be in front of 1,000 people and probably a set location. You would think it's hard to tour enough for AEW. So he's excelled in those types of environments and can bring a brand along and make it, then you'll have the whole thing like NXT and WWE, right? Like you're going to have people potentially who are hardcore fans that are going to be like, well, yeah, AEW kind of sucks right now, but I love Ring of Honor. I don't miss anything Ring of Honor. Like those shows don't miss. There's only 5 matches on their pay-per-views. It's only an hour a week. It's awesome. It's like the greatest thing ever. It's what I remember AEW was in the beginning. Like, and Cole being the top of that is something you could do. But this is all reckless speculation by me, and don't expect anything like this to happen. So
it's interesting that you bring up taping it as we wrap up here, because like as someone that's been to a ton of AEW shows this year, I feel like, and I'm not being ungrateful, but they do show, dark matches before. But when you go to taping that's Dynamite and then Rampage, like that is a slog. Like that is a long, long taping. But then when you go to a standalone Rampage, it's kind of feels a little bit shortchanged, shall we say. So it'd be interesting to see whether they decide to tape like Ring of Honor, because say they get like 1 hour of something, unless they, do it like in a studio that doesn't move like NXT or something. you could always sell tickets where it's you get your hour of Rampage and then an hour of Ring of Honor taped, and that might be a bit better than just piling on like dark and dark elevation matches to an hour Rampage. You know that don't feel as prestigious as like an actual show. But let's not do like a Dynamite Rampage Ring of Honor taping marathon. That would be insane.
Yes, and if it depends if you control like I guess the only positive of like having the Honor Club way
Yeah.
to watch it is potentially you could show it Eastern time 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. You could have that in front of the live Rampage crowd because you don't really compete with SmackDown because you're not on cable, so you can control your narrative, so to speak, and you could so it doesn't get spoiled either. Like if you're really going to watch Ring of Honor, you're probably going to watch Ring of Honor over SmackDown anyway, I would think. So that'd be a way to do it. And then if you watch SmackDown, you can always just, hey, I'll watch Ring of Honor instead of you kind of might cannibalize there. So just me thinking out loud, but I think there's ways to. It's important that it's, I think, taped. You know, it's not like 6 taped at once. And then that's like why Ring of Honor sucked in the past, because there would be live reports and you see all the results and then there's no reason to watch it. So if there's a way to watch it live for the people that really want to watch it, I think that's still important, but also getting that live feel. And like you said with Rampage, I've only ever been to the Marathon, Dark, Dynamite, Rampage tapings. I've never been to just a Rampage taping, but I can imagine it's like, oh, cool. We had Brian Cage and Lance Archer was our main event. Super cool. I'm glad I paid full price for this. So
I'll be honest, me and everyone else I know did not go to the Rampage taping in New Jersey before Full Gear, even though Eddie Kingston was, getting his dream match. Like collectively as Eddie Kingston fans, we all decided he was probably getting the singles match at the pay-per-view, so we should go for dinner instead. Because Rampage is just Rampage, like that's it. But anyway, we made it through all 7 matches on the card, and I think we did really good stretching like that out, to actually have like a lot to talk about, because
I think we did more lifting story wise than AEW has done in their presentation. So shout out to us.
Because I feel like this show, I think it will be a good show. You're gonna have good matches. You've got so many talented people on. It's always gonna be like that. And then you're gonna have people saying like, "You all that complained about no build, it was a great show." Like, well, yeah, of course it was a great show, but like that's not the point, But I think the story of this show really is going to be just the future of Ring of Honor, and I think that, and what Tony announced next, or what the results of the matches signal to us, whether they signal what could be coming as far as deals, or just how he sees the direction and the split from AEW. So that's why I wanted to have you here tonight and really like deep dive in it, because there's a much wider discussion to be had than 7 matches and the embassy. There's a lot more. It all kind of like this card is really just about the last year that we've had of Ring of Honor being integrated into AEW. Me as Miss Dynamite, you as Ring of Tyler, like it's all had to come together, hasn't it?
There you go. Yep. It's the combining, and Tony Khan has made it all happen, I would say. So I think
we definitely like much smoother than Ring of Honor AEW.
Yeah, there you go. So we're a prime example. So just remember, this is the better fusion of the brands than what ROH was in AEW in the beginning. So
well, unless you have any further like thoughts you want to say on Ring of Honor card, I feel like we did cover kind of every like nook and cranny of what could be going on with Ring of Honor if possible, but I just don't want to leave anything out.
No, I think that's everything. I mean, Ring of Honor is always good for like you kind of alluded to, like someone appearing to kind of set up the next thing. Maybe not right away, but I think there will be some little bit of a surprise, and I'm curious to see how the crowd is. It's in Lowell, Massachusetts, right? Is that you had all the slide decks there?
It's in Texas.
Oh, it was in Texas? Maybe the last one was in Lowell. Maybe that's why I'm saying that.
I think it is.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're.
It's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like the Dallas-Fort Worth area, actually. So never mind. So hopefully the crowd's good. That's not like the Northeast. is usually like in Baltimore, it's like hardcore ROH. This is, not the same, but I'm curious to see how the crowd is, because the first couple crowds have been super hot. And if that is also dipping, I think that's another sign of like even the hardcore of hardcore are like not as in on this as one would hope. So something else to look for is the heat of the crowd. So.
Well, this crowd know they're getting a dog collar match, so like they better be hot. Like
yeah,
you can't sit in your hands for that. But yeah, it will be interesting to see like how the crowd reacts to it, and just these hardcores of Ring of Honor. I wonder if people doing like Extreme Pro Ring of Honor podcasts that are just like so mad at having to see AEW wrestlers when they just want to watch Ring of Honor.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's I would say for me personally, like I'm just glad there is a Ring of Honor that's, like we talked earlier, not part of, just on the network, and it's a dead brand like ECW or something. So I think, you can complain, but it's either this or some sort of NWA type version of it where like it could have been good and then now it's what it is, where it's not super good. So I think it is what it is, and the life's not fair or perfect. So this is what we got.
But Tony tried. He tried.
Yep, he did.
Ring of Honor, and he tried. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Tyler. And everyone, please go follow Tyler at Ring of Tyler, and absolutely subscribe to the Torch YouTube channel. I can't stress enough how great it is, guys. And I watch every single episode. It brings me a lot of joy to see you and Zach discuss and dissect wrestling. So yeah, everyone go and give the Torch YouTube a subscription. And thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was an honor to be here. Hopefully more in the future, and hopefully we'll have you on the Torch more in the future as well. And and I assume you're coming to the next where's the next pay-per-view? The AEW pay-per-view.
Revolution.
Yeah. Where's it at? I don't know.
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Okay. Are you making that trip?
Yeah, it's at the Chase Center. So I feel like
there you go.
Some special,
There you go.
You've got to turn up at the door and say, "I am Miss Chase," and
I own Chase Bank, so please let me in. Yeah. To show them your passport, I guess, and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, of course." So yeah, well, cool, very cool. I I don't know if you've ever been to San Francisco, but is a lovely city. So excited for your report card back on that. So.
And thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget to go follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram is all at Stephanie M. Chase. And subscribe to this channel. I'm like so desperately close to 2K. It's at the point where it's annoying. It's like less than 20 people. Like, at least 20 of you must have a friend that you can tell to go subscribe to the channel just to get me there. Like, come on, guys. I got to get there before the end of the year. But once again, thank you, Tyler. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And goodbye.